Hi guys, Going Green Mom here with another video on my pantry planning project. Today I am considering water, and I suppose a lot of people don't consider water in their pantry, but when you think about things in terms of preparedness, it is part of your food storage plans. So for those that are new here, my name is Megan. I am working with histamine intolerance and MCAS symptoms. So that actually affects the things that I'm able to eat and the way I am able to store and prepare the food for my family and myself. So we'll get into that a little bit with this, and hopefully you can find some good information today. So the normal advice is 1 gallon per day per person and 1 quart per day per pet. Now, the glaring thing to me there is I am pretty sure both of my cats don't drink 1 quart per day. And both of my cats combined probably drink less than, say, a Great Dane. So, not necessarily the most awesome advice, very generic, but one book I have used over the years when thinking about my food storage and being prepared is from a book called Survival Mom. It's by Lisa Bedford, and in one of the little sideline things, she actually recommends 1 ounce per pound for your pets as a guide to how much water to store. So over the next few days, I will probably be trying to get my scales to work and trying to get good weights on my kitties, because I really have no idea how much Miss Pingo weighs. Charlie is somewhere in the vicinity of 17 pounds and possibly having a hairball. Anywho, so basically what I'm saying here is try and get a little bit more tailored to your situation than standard advice, but make sure you have enough for everybody in your household. And then some other things to consider. If you are in a desert or a high humidity area that's very hot, you might want to consider storing more water. Another consideration that you might want to make is what you are preparing food-wise. If you have freeze-dried foods that you're storing for your food storage in your pantry, you definitely need to remember to store extra water for your cooking and eating so that you can reconstitute those foods. So, some things to consider. How many people or pets are in your house? For me, there are 3 of us, and I do share custody of my kids, but for an emergency situation, I am always going to plan to be prepared for them. I don't honestly, in a true emergency, know what would happen. There would be the possibility to combine households, so I would wind up with actually extra people. But then there's a chance that I would have my kids and it would just be us, and they would be with me all the time. So there's a wide variety, but for what's in my grasp of being able to plan for, I typically will try to plan for 3 people full-time and 2 cats full-time. So the next thing to consider is space and where you're going to store the things that you're storing. So in my instance, I know that I have some water stored underneath my son's bed. And in all honesty, I will probably try to expand on the amount of water that is stored under beds. This helps in two ways. It keeps random junk from getting kicked under their beds and stored. Um, but then it also, it's generally a cool, dark place. It's going to be okay there. It's not taking up a bunch of space that I have to try to move things around or that sort of thing. I do also plan to store in some 5-gallon jugs. I currently have a sort of rotation. I have 3 5-gallon jugs that I use for water storage that we work through over the course of the month. And those are out where we have easy access to them for as we need water for cooking or drinking. Another thing to consider is that if you are storing in plastic, the temperature that plastic starts leaching chemicals into the water is 80 degrees Fahrenheit or about 26.6 degrees Celsius. I am not a scientist or a doctor, but I do know that when my mom was diagnosed with breast cancer, her oncologists and doctors were very adamant that the time that she spent driving truck and storing bottles of water in her back seat so she would get all of her quote unquote water for the day was probably more of a hurt than a help. So I do try to avoid plastic if I can. Unfortunately, when you're storing something as heavy as 5 gallons of water, it is rather difficult to store that in glass because it makes it even heavier. I have dealt with a situation where a glass carboy got broken or it fell and it did break. But it also wound up injuring someone and they had to get stitches. So considering I tend to be, as a typical Ehlers-Danlos patient, is a bit on the what do you call it? Klutzy side. I am going to remain with plastic in that consideration. But then I need to go back and think about how to deal with that later in the process. So while I'm thinking about that, I might as well think about what are not options for us. So other things that you often hear about in terms of storing water for preparedness situations is getting tablets that will chemically kill off anything in your water, treating your water with bleach so that it kills off anything in the water. I'm sensitive to both chemicals in a general sense, like synthetics, and I'm also sensitive to chlorine. So both of those options would actually not be great for me. And I know that my daughter can sort of taste a plastic or a metallic if things are stored in plastic or metal. So I also need to be aware of that. Because if she's sensitive enough to taste those, I'm just going to make the wild assumption that that is her body trying to tell her something. So those are some things I need to think about when I am trying to figure out how to store water. So as far as that goes, what is my plan now? It is going to be to get up to 1 week of storage for 3 people and 2 cats. And as I mentioned before, I am going to plan on doing that in 5-gallon and I do have some 1-gallon jugs, and I will continue storing those, and I'll probably actually add to those a bit. I typically have stored the 1 gallon jugs. I don't use milk jugs because that can harbor bacteria from the milk, but I do use old vinegar jugs. They seem to be a bit stronger than milk jugs, and they also hold up to, like they don't bend as easily, and they don't break, and they seem to be fairly strong jugs over the course of time. So I will probably add some to those as I can. And then as far as filtering goes, I do plan to make a homemade Berkey. I was looking at the travel Berkey, and my daughter pointed out that if it gets stored in metal, it's probably not something she's going to be able to drink. And so that's not really a good option. So I have been looking on Amazon, and I can get the Berkey filters. I also found a 2 gallon glass container that I'm going to be hopefully having it filter into. And sorry. And then I will have to see on either, a lot of people use stock pots for the top part, and she agreed that as long as it's not there for very long, that should probably be okay. Because like she can put her coffee in a metal coffee mug, and that seems fine as long as she drinks it fairly quickly. It's just she can't like take a metal water bottle out for the day sort of situation. So I'm planning on getting that filtration into my routines, and you will probably see a video on making that once I get the pieces and parts. And then I've also been looking at the UV style water filters for killing off pathogens as a means to avoid any major bacterial or parasitic type issues as a backup to the Berkey. So the other consideration here is the fact, if you've been watching me for the last few weeks, you have probably heard me mention at some point that I actually react to water. Typically, I will be itching a year or so ago if I drank straight water. And when I say straight water, this is not tap water. This would be filtered water that I bought from a store. I would have been broken out in hives from it. So I have found a few other channels with MCAS and histamine type issues that have had the same issue with water. Many of them just bounce from one brand to another until they find one they don't react to. Because I don't buy and don't want to buy single-use disposable plastic, and I have a feeling a good bit of that is the plastic that I'm reacting to, I think the Berkey will probably take care of most of it. I am considering trying to figure out if I can add the fluoride filters to the filter setup for the homemade Berkey. I am hoping I can do that, and that it's not a problem with the space. So keep your fingers crossed for me on that. But I'm also planning on just slowly reintroducing it. The response I had from the different people I talked to was generally, well, I knew I needed water, so I just never quit drinking it. Even if it was, giving them anaphylactic reactions, they're just decided they were going to keep drinking water. And over time, it got better. So my plan right now for that is I am going to start drinking 1 glass of water in the morning. I typically take my supplements and things when I get up and give Pinga her shot. So when I do that, I think I am just going to start with, and I might have to drop it down and only do 8 ounces at first. I'm not sure. But a 16-ounce glass of water in the morning is what I'm hoping to start off with. And then as my body gets used to that, I will probably try to swap out some of the milk I would drink later in the day and work up to like the 8 cups a day that is often recommended. So that is my plan, and I am going to let you guys go, and I will see you on the live, or if you're watching this at a later point in time, come check out my other videos. I typically release on Tuesdays, Fridays, and do a live after my premiere on Tuesdays.